Welcome to another Chubby Meeple How to Play video. In this video, we're going to take a look at the two-player game Omen, Heir to the Dunes from designer John Clowdus and published by Kolossal Games. This is the newest addition and a standalone expansion to the Omen Saga and can be combined with any previous Omen titles. Let's jump to the table and I'll show you how it's played. I would like to note that all of the components you will see over the course of this video are prototype components and subject to change. To begin setup for Omen, Heir to the Dunes, place the city board on the table between the two players. Shuffle the 9 reward tiles and place 3 face-down stacks on each of the 3 designated areas. Each of these stacks will contain 3 reward tiles. Place 1 war-torn token on top of each of these 3 reward tile stacks with the peaceful side facing up. Then shuffle all of the unit cards and place them in a face-down deck in the designated area next to the city board. It is important to note that this deck will be shared between the two players throughout the course of the game. Place the favor card next to the deck, making sure to leave room for a discard pile. Then place the 20 coins in their designated area, also next to the city board. Each player will then draw 4 cards from the deck, as well as take 4 coins from the supply. Each player then takes a god reference card, either Horus or Anubis, as well as a set of 3 structure cards matching that god. Players will place their structure cards in their play area with the build side face up. A game of Omen Heir to the Dunes typically begins with the oldest player taking the first turn. However, you can play what is called the Emissary of War variant. If you play with this variant to determine first player, after standard setup, each player will select 1 unit card from their hand and place it face down in front of them. This is the player's emissary. Both emissaries are then simultaneously revealed. Each player totals up the cost, offering, and strength values printed on their emissary, and the player whose emissary has the greatest combined value is the first player for the game. In the event of a tie, the emissary with the highest strength value will break this tie, and if the tie still exists, the oldest player will go first. The first player moves their emissary card to the discard pile. The other player returns his or her emissary to their hand. The game then begins with the first player taking the first turn. Once the first player is determined, you will flip the favor card to the side matching the god of the second player. In Omen Heir to the Dunes, players are going to be taking turns gathering wealth, playing units, warring over cities, and making offerings to the gods or building structures. On their turn, the active player will proceed through their turn, following a series of steps in order, beginning with the wealth step, then moving to the surge step, then the war step, and finally the offering step. Let's look at each of these steps one by one. The wealth step represents the player gathering their forces and resources in preparation for the upcoming battle. During the wealth step, the active player will gain coins and/or draw cards. At the start of the active player's wealth step, they reveal the top card of the deck. If the unit is devoted to their god, they add it to their hand. If not, the unit is placed in the discard pile. The player may discard a neutral unit from their hand in order to repeat this process one more time. The active player then receives 3 wealth actions that they are able to spend during the wealth step. Each wealth action may be used to either draw 1 unit card from the deck or gain 1 coin from the supply. Wealth actions can be used in any combination, but all wealth actions must be chosen prior to any cards or coins being taken. If the active player chooses to use all 3 of their wealth actions to draw cards, they get to draw an additional card. If the active player uses all of their wealth actions to gain coins, they gain an additional coin. This is known as the wealth action bonus. If at any time during a game, a player would draw a card but the deck has no cards in it, simply shuffle the discard pile and place it face down the designated space next to the city board and draw from the newly shuffled deck. It is important again to remember that the deck is shared between both players, while units that are in the player's hands and on their sides of the city belong to those respective players. It is also important to note that on the first turn of the game, the first player will receive 2 wealth actions instead of the normal 3. This player still receives a wealth action bonus if they use all of their wealth actions to take cards or coins. So using your 2 wealth actions to take 2 cards would grant a bonus 3rd card. Likewise, using the 2 wealth actions on the first turn of the game to collect 2 coins would grant a 3rd bonus coin. Let's walk through an example of the wealth step. Since the Anubis card is flipped face up and showing Anubis's favor, this indicates that our Horus player is the first player. So the Horus player will get to begin the game first and take the first wealth action or the wealth step. At the start of the wealth step, they will flip up the first card of the deck or reveal the first card of the deck. If it is favored to their god, they would be able to add it to their hand. This particular card is not favored or not devoted to any god. It is simply a neutral unit, as there are no icons under the name of this particular unit. So this card does not get added to the hand. It is simply discarded. They then get to take their 3 wealth actions. And they see, when we're looking at their hand of cards, all of their cards are fairly low cost with the exception of this hand of the favored card. So they may want to hang on to that. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to go ahead and we're going to use the 3 wealth actions to simply take 3 coins, which is going to grant us a 4th bonus coin. So we'll simply grab 4 coins from the supply and add them to our own personal supply. That is the end of the wealth step, and we will now move to the surge step. After the wealth step, the active player will proceed to the surge step, where the majority of the game takes place. During the surge step, the active player will spend coins in order to play units from their hand. Additionally, any reward tiles that have been previously gained may be used for their godlike powers, and any completed structures are resolved. At the beginning of the surge step, the active player checks to see if any of their structures have cards equal to or greater than the indicated build cost tucked underneath them. If so, the player flips the structure to its completed side and resolves its ability. So for example, the Monument of the Sun has a build 5, which means we have to have 5 cards tucked under this card in order to complete building the Monument to the Sun. Once the Monument to the Sun has 5 cards tucked under it, we get to flip this over to its completed side. It will be worth 3 victory points at the end of the game, and then we must immediately activate the ability on this particular structure. Since this is the first surge step of the game, there are no monuments completed or even under construction at this point, so we can simply skip the construction phase or the check step for structures. The most common way that cards are played is to pay a unit's cost and add it to a city. To do so, the active player will return coins to the supply equal to the unit's cost. Then they will simply add the unit to one of the 3 cities in front of them on their side of the city board. The active player can play as many units as they wish from their hand into any city of their choice, as long as all costs can be paid. However, a player can never have more than 5 units on their side of a given city. This is referred to as the city capacity. For the purpose of city capacity, all units count as 1 unit unless they have the keyword Kolossal printed on their card. A player cannot play, move, or use any ability that would add a unit to their side of a city that is already at city capacity. When a player plays a unit to a city, they must first check the unit's devotion prior to resolving any abilities. If the unit is devoted to the god not currently favored, then the favor card will be flipped to its other side. Thus, a player will always flip the favor card when they play a unit devoted to both gods. A player is considered to be favored when their god is face up on the favor card. The first time during a player's turn that they play a unit devoted to their god, the cost of that unit is reduced by 1 to a minimum of 0. In addition to playing cards from hand, once per surge step, the active player may use one of their reward tiles. To do this, they take a reward tile that they have previously won that is in their play area and flip it face up and resolve the ability. While reward tiles do grant powerful abilities, using these abilities reduce the value of the tile from 2 victory points down to 1 victory point. This is noted on the bottom right corner of all reward tiles in the game. In Omen Heir to the Dunes, there are 4 different types of unit cards: Embalmed, Follower, Initiate, and Vizier. Each unit has abilities unique to their type. Let's take a look at these 4 unit types. First, we'll look at the Embalmed. These units are devoted to both gods as indicated by the icons under their name. They also have the keywords Treasured as well as Labor. After a unit with the Labored keyword ability is revealed during the offering step to build a structure, then the player receives its Labor ability before placing it in the discard pile. The treasured keyword simply means that if this card is in the player's hand at the end of the game, it will be worth 1 victory point. Next, we'll look at followers. A follower card is devoted to one god or the other, indicated again by the symbol under their name. This particular card is a devoted follower of Anubis. Followers have a wide array of abilities, but they all carry the keyword reinforce. After a player plays a unit devoted to their god into a city, the player can resolve the reinforce ability of a single unit devoted to their god in that city, including the unit just played. So if we were to play this Tainted Disciple down with Anubis, since Anubis is currently the favored god, we would get to activate either this reinforce ability, discarding the top card of the deck if it's an Anubis card, get to play it for no cost, or if we have other followers that are devoted inside any of the 3 cities on our side of the board, we could activate their reinforce cost instead. The next unit type we need to look at are the initiates. These units are not devoted to either god. Initiates all have the keyword invocation, which has 2 effects. First, after a unit with invocation is played to a city, the player resolves its ability if their god is currently favored. Next, all of the player's units with invocation are +1 strength, again, if their god is favored. So even though this is a neutral unit, if we play the Sunset Marauder down to a city, because we are the Anubis player and Anubis is favored, we would get to activate the invocation ability. Also, this Sunset Marauder would have a strength of 3 when resolving conflicts, because again, Anubis is currently favored, and it is our god. The third and final type of unit that we need to take a look at is the Vizier card. The Viziers are not devoted to either god. All Vizier units are colossal units, meaning they count as 2 units, and they all carry the new keyword maneuver. When a unit with maneuver is played into a city, the player may move units equal to the indicated number without maneuver, meaning this card has a maneuver 2. This would allow me to move 2 other units on the board that do not have the keyword maneuver into or out of cities. They do not change sides, so if I chose to move some units from my opponent's side of the board, I could simply move them between the cities also on my opponent's side of the board. I'm not going to take a unit and pull it to my side. And I could do that with up to 2 units. Again, colossal units count as 2 units, so if I were to use this Rabid Usurper in battle and win, I would not be able to keep this card on my side as the victor because it counts as 2 units and I can only keep 1 unit as the victor. Let's take a quick look at an example of a Surge Step turn. Continuing our example from before, we are the Horus player. Now, one thing I need to correct, I need to put a coin back, because as the first player, Horus would have only been given 2 wealth actions instead of the 3 that we took. So I put a coin back so that we only received 3 coins instead of 4. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a coin in order to play the Upstart Advisor. This unit has Colossal and allows me to maneuver 2 units. It also has a strength of 1. I'm simply going to play that into the center city on my side of the board to indicate that I control that unit. I am then also going to spend 3 coins to play the Hand of the Favor. Hand of the Favor is an initiate, also not devoted to either god, with a strength of 2. I'm also going to play that into this central city. So now I have a strength of 3 going into this middle city, making my claim to that city pretty powerful in the event that a war step would be taken. Playing the Hand of the Favored to the city grants the strength value and would allow me to activate its ability with the keyword invocation. However, Anubis is the favored god, and my god is Horus, so I'm literally just playing that card for its strength value in the city. I'm also going to pay 2 coins to play the Soul Sifter, again, an initiate that is not devoted to either god, carrying the invocation keyword, meaning I would get to activate its ability if my god was favored. Again, that is not the case, but I simply want to get some strength down in some of these cities. So I will pay 2 coins and play that card down. That will end my Surge Step, leaving me with 1 card in hand. We now move to the next step, which is the War Step. During the War Step, the active player resolves conflicts in any war-torn cities. First, the active player checks to see if any of the cities with reward tiles that are still in them are war-torn. A city is considered war-torn if an opponent has at least 3 units in the city. That again is the number of units, not the total sum of their strength. If your opponent has 3 units in the city, and or the sum of both players' units totals 5 or more, the city is considered war-torn. When a city becomes war-torn, its war-torn token is flipped from the peaceful side to the war-torn side. What we see on camera right now, there would be no war-torn cities because this is the active player. The opponent has no units in the city currently, and we don't have a total of 5 units in any of the 3 cities between the 2 players. So none of these cities will be considered war-torn. It's important to note that a city can become or cease to be war-torn during any step of the game. However, conflicts are only ever resolved during this war step. When resolving any conflicts, if there are multiple war-torn cities, the active player gets to choose the order in which the war-torn cities are resolved. To resolve a war-torn city, each player will add the strength values of all of their units in that city. The player with the highest total strength is the victor. The victor gains the top reward tile from that city, places it in their play area with the 2 VP side up. The victor then must destroy all but one of their units in that city. The loser of the battle must destroy all but 2 of their units in the same way. Lastly, we flip the war-torn token back to its peaceful side. This process is then repeated for any other war-torn cities that remain, and this process will continue until all war-torn cities have been resolved and all 3 are back at a peaceful state. Again, would like to note, a player can play units into a city that has no reward tiles in it, but that city will never become war-torn again, and thus a conflict will not occur in that particular area. It's also important to note again that colossal units, or in the case of Omen, Heir to the Dunes, all the Vizier units, and some of the follower units, carry the keyword colossal, and a colossal unit counts as 2 units instead of 1 when you determine if a city is war-torn or not. So if an opponent had 2 colossal units in one city, that would count as 4 units, which would absolutely trigger a conflict to make that city war-torn. When destroying units at the end of a conflict, players must remember that colossal units count as 2 units. This means that the victor can never keep a colossal unit in that city. However, the loser of the conflict can choose to keep 1 colossal unit or 2 units without the word colossal. Let's look at an example of resolving a conflict. At the start of the active player's war step, we have a city that is war-torn because there are 5 units in the city. Now, while looking at this, it looks like there are only 4 units in the city. The Rabid Usurper is a Vizier unit, which carries the keyword colossal, meaning it counts as 2 units. So we have 2, 3, 4, 5 units in this particular city, causing it to be war-torn. The players, in order to resolve this conflict, the active player will compare the strength value of their units. The player over here has a total strength value of 3 printed on the cards. However, their temple servant carries the keyword invocation, which means they get +1 strength as long as their god is currently the favored god. In this case, Anubis is the favored god, so this temple servant actually carries a strength value of 2, meaning our Anubis player has a total strength of 4 in this war-torn city. Our Horus players' units have a total strength of 5. The Rabid Usurper strength of 3 plus the Sunset Marauder strength of 2, giving them 5. The Sunset Marauder has the keyword ability of invocation as well, but it does not provide any additional strength because Horus is not the favored god during this particular conflict. The active player, or the Horus player in this case, has a total strength of 5. The Anubis player has a strength of 4, meaning that our Horus player has won this conflict. For winning the conflict, they get to take the top reward tile of the city that was war-torn and place it face up in their play area with the 2 victory point side showing face up. And we'll lay it here just to show that it is on their side of the board. They also must destroy all but 1 unit. Since the Rabid Usurper carries the keyword colossal, they cannot keep this unit because it counts as 2 units, so it will get removed and sent to the discard pile. Our Anubis player must discard all but 2 units. They have 2 units, so they do not have to discard anything. Finally, our War-Torn token is flipped back to its peaceful side, and conflict is over. If any of the other cities had War-Torn tokens because it flipped to their War-Torn side because of the number of units on one side or the other of the city, or a total of 5 units, as we just saw here, the active player would have the choice of which order to resolve those conflicts as well during this war step. After the war step, we enter the offering step. During the offering step, a player may offer one of their unit cards from their hand as a sacrifice to the gods. In return, they are granted additional cards and/or coins. To make an offering, the active player will select a card from their hand and discard it. They then draw a number of cards and/or coins equal to that card's offering value. So if a card has a value of 3, for example, the player has the option of discarding that card and drawing 3 cards, taking 3 coins from the supply, or doing a combination of 2 cards and a coin, or 2 coins and a card. In Omen Heir to the Dunes, players have a third option available during this offering step. Instead of discarding a card as an offering, in order to gain cards or coins, a player can reveal a unit from hand in order to build or begin construction of one of their incomplete structures. The unit is revealed, and cards equal to that unit's strength are placed under the structure that the player wishes to build. The player then resolves any labor abilities on the revealed unit and places it on top of the discard pile. Keep in mind the following rules when you're building during the offering step. First, a player can only build one structure at a time. A structure with any cards under it is considered being built. A player can never have cards under more than one structure at a time. A player can also place more cards under a structure than what is required to build it. A structure is not considered complete until it has been flipped to its completed side at the start of a player's surge step. So for example, our Monument of the Sun has a build cost of 5. If we were to tuck 5 cards under Monument of the Sun during the offering step, that building or that structure is not considered complete until it comes back to our surge step and is then flipped to its completed side. For example, this Hope Weaver card has an offering value of 4 and a strength of 1. So, if we were to discard this card during the offering step, our choices are to draw 4 cards, gain 4 coins, draw 3 cards and 1 coin, draw 1 card and 3 coins, draw 2 cards, take 2 coins, or build for a value of 1, meaning we would tuck 1 card under any of our 3 incomplete structures. At the end of the offering step, the active player discards card from their hand until they have a maximum of 5 cards. They then return coins to the supply until they have a maximum of 10 coins. Play then proceeds to their opponent, who begins with their wealth step. Play will continue back and forth between players, where each player will take their wealth step, their surge step, the war step, and the offering step. The game will end at the end of the active player's offering step if 2 or more cities have no reward tiles remaining in them, or if the active player has built all 3 of their structures. After the game end is triggered, each player will calculate their victory points. The player with the most victory points wins, proving to be worthy of the gods. Each player will score victory points in the following ways. They will gain 2 victory points for every reward tile that is face down in their play area. For every reward tile whose ability has been used, meaning it is face up in their play area, they will receive 1 victory point. Any cards that are held in hand containing the treasured keyword are worth 1 victory point, and players will gain victory points as indicated on each of their completed structures. Again, the player with the most victory points is the winner. In the event of a tie, the player with the most unused reward tiles is the winner. If the players are still tied, then the player with the most treasured units in their hand is the winner. If the players are still tied, the player whose god is favored is the winner.